Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolSomething.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? And I have to say, if you're not playing standard right now, you're doing yourself a disservice.
You're missing out, Ruben Bressler.
I mean, I'm hearing that from everywhere, so that is great to hear.
That is always very good. And if you missed our super fun pre-show where we talk about movies and games and board games and all sorts of stuff, patrons and subscribers to this channel get access to that extended stuff early. And we kick it off with our first pick and our promo code reminder. Visit CoolStuffInc.com. Use the promo code Magic Mics to save 5% off anything in the store. Singles, sealed, supplies, whatever you want. Get 5% off by using the promo code Magic Mics. And support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. Of course, thanks to CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock. Check it out. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate it.
Before we get into the show in earnest, related to Patreon, because I know we have patrons, I do want to just make sure that people know about this iOS update with Patreon. Basically, the bottom line is use your desktop instead of using iOS to be a member of our Patreon.
Yep. Please.
And switch before November, apparently.
Yeah, if you are a patron through iOS, obviously, thank you. But secondly, let's not overcharge on either end of the transaction and just go to the website and be a patron there. Check us out. We appreciate you guys. Be access to our Discord, which we just posted up some deck lists that we were talking about in the pre-show. All sorts of fun stuff. And speaking of fun stuff, it's been a pretty fun year. I'm not going to lie. This has been a pretty rocking and rolling year. It didn't necessarily start on the greatest foot/note, I guess, as you could say, with murders at Karlov Manor. But I think now we've had like hit after hit after hit. And on the Blogatog, there was a question of what's been the best received set of 2024 so far. And Rosewater notes that it's either Modern Horizons 3 or Bloomburrow, depending on what factors you prioritize. Both of them have made a ton of money. Both of them have made huge strides in audiences and what those audiences are wanting. And everyone's playing a lot of Magic. So, like, let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, as Magic players, we have to have just the realistic perspective of our worst thing this year. Arguably, you could be either it's Assassin's Creed or Karlov Manor.
Yeah.
And neither one of those is like abysmal.
No,
you know what I mean?
We're
Like,
not in aftermath levels by any means.
yeah, we're in a pretty good spot if we're saying like that's our bottom line.
For sure.
And our top line has been insane. I mean, like
Agreed.
the ceiling has been unreal. So yeah, like we don't have much to argue about this year. Hell, in a lot of game categories, to be honest, not even just Magic, but Magic particularly, this has been a pretty strong year overall. Hell, even all the secret layers have been bangers. Like there's this, it's been ridiculous. It's been absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, Magic is definitely hitting both for average and for power this year. The things that they've released to date, they've released 7 major projects to date, not counting like secret layers and one-offs. Ravnica Remastered, Murders at Karlov Manor, Fallout, Outlaws at Thunder Junction, Modern Horizons 3, Assassin's Creed, and Bloomburrow. That's pretty good. That's 2 unmitigated home runs, then like several good solid base hits, and only a couple of misses. And we've still got Duskmorn and we've still got Foundations on the horizon to see how we wrap up the year. So definitely a good year for Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's saying something because remember, we were sitting here going like, man, 2023, it's got Lord of the Rings and it's this and it's that. And they might actually finish the year a better year than they had last year. Like, that's ridiculous to even say right now.
I mean, like I was saying, man, Lord of the Rings attendance was the only thing that beat Bloomburrow. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy. And that was a very special setup with all the licensed so-and-so and the higher cost and yada yada. Like, and next year with Marvel.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. Like, we think this year's big on the pace we're on. You have Marvel and Final Fantasy next year.
Oh my.
Right.
So we know next year is going to be huge. Like,
and in 2026, we're going to get a whole Miku set of 185 cards. You heard it here first. I'm predicting.
I was going to say,
it would probably sell like hotcakes. So why not? Like, seriously, you might as well do it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm very excited. Look, I still want to do Star Trek. I still think that, or
Ooh, like yeah. Yeah.
There's definitely some options of some IPs out there that could be really exciting. Maybe just as like Secret Lairs, that kind of leads us to there's some issues with Monty Python and the Holy Grail selling out really quickly. But as we've discussed many times, you either put it as many as you can order, or you set it to a number, and there's goods and bads, and we talk about that.
The bottom line for me, though, is I don't know that the release schedule was any different than it was last year. It still feels like they're releasing too much too fast. However, to me, it feels like the pacing is better in 2024 than it was in 2023 and 2022. And that might just be apocryphal. That might just be me thinking that. There were a couple of moments in there when they released like 2 things in 3 weeks, and I was like, all right, that's too much.
Right.
And like the spoiler seasons kind of stepped on each other's toes. But for me, this year their pacing was also much better.
I think what I've noticed for me is the messaging has changed a little bit. So it doesn't seem like so much constantly, which seems to have helped. And I think players as a whole have kind of decided, like, okay, I'm a modern player. It doesn't matter that there's extra standard sets coming out or whatever, right? Like I'm a standard player. I'm probably not going to go buy a bunch of Modern Horizons 3 or whatever.
Right.
And I think people have kind of, in a way, gotten to the point Wizards wanted us to get to, whether we like it or not, is that when they're saying like every product isn't for you, like this is exactly what they meant, right? Like there's going to be 4 or 5 things out there you're going to love. And then there's going to be 3 or 4 that you just go, I don't even need this. Right. And that's totally okay too.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, like for me, the absolute lowest was Ravnica Remastered. That was a bad set.
Sure.
It didn't have stuff like Doubling Season or whatever in it that you would expect it to, even if they reprinted it recently. Whatever, if it's Ravnica Remastered, you'd think you'd have the biggest Ravnica cards in it. So that was a giant dud, unfortunately. And
yeah,
honestly,
that's probably the one bad one I would say outright this year. I agree with you.
Just straight up bad. Like, and the stores knew it. No one ordered that much, as I understand it, on the distributor level. And I think Wizards also lowered expectations quite a bit because, But okay, and hopefully they learned some lessons from that. My favorite sort of surprise was Ravnica Clue Edition. Ravnica Clue Edition was an absolute monster. That thing came out blazing. We're talking like $80 a whack, and I think they're all sold out now. I don't know. I haven't looked recently, but like could not keep them on the shelves. Like
I got 2 and parked them behind me, so
they just flew. They grew wings, man. It was nuts. I think Fallout was absolutely fantastic set that crushed it. But and it wasn't in the. I don't even think it was in the bottom. The bottom, we talk Ravnica Mastered Murders is down there, and Assassin's Creed, because you really have to care about that that world or IP, or nothing's going to happen there.
But the set and the cards weren't bad.
They were fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had some good reprints in there too.
Yeah, they wrote a very sort of narrow line of it's not too good, but we pushed a little bit in some areas, and we made Assassins matter more or whatever. Okay,
right,
that's fine. But the hits this year, I mean, Outlaws still killed it. Outlaws was doing great, was going to be like, the banner set or whatever, until Modern Horizons 3 showed up and crushed, and then here comes Bloomburrow that was killing it before we knew anything about it. Duskmourn, if it works, awesome. Foundations, if it works, even better.
I mean, what's crazy is I'm looking at Duskmourn going, it's going to have some appeal, and it's probably still going to be 3rd place.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably going to sell well and still be 3rd place.
It's tapping into Stranger Things. It's tapping into a genre in much the same way that Murders tried to and Outlaws tried to.
Mm-hmm.
It is not as widely appealable as the audience for Bloomburrow. But not everything can be.
I'm going to lose my mind if we get one more friggin' set where there is the implication of a like cop police, type force, but you don't have it anywhere in the cards.
Sure.
Streets of New Capenna, we were right there. Outlaws of Thunder Junction, right there. Like,
we need a Secret Lair Law and Order.
Yeah, exactly.
You need those types of characters. And one card that says sheriff on it or whatever is not good enough. I'm sorry. It's just not.
I think my problem with that logic of not including them is like, what does it hurt if they're included?
Right. Like what?
Right. I think that's the part I've never heard vocalized or written anywhere. It's just, what's the harm done if these characters exist in the story? They don't have to kill anybody off. They're just there to be a resistance to the bad guys.
Right. It's about,
You know?
you can't have a bad guy unless there's a good guy, quote unquote, chasing them. If you want to make that line gray, that's okay too. But you gotta have that other side. You can't just imply
You know what
the
OTJ
lawyers were the guys keeping things under check in New Capenna. Give me a break.
it needed like two or three just like some US Marshal type, some Rangers that are willing
Some
to be in
Elliot
the gray
Ness.
space or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it needed.
Right. Like one
Right? It didn't need to go crazy.
figurehead. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
the Boros are like the cops on Ravnica, but we don't go nuts over that, right? Like they are
Yeah,
the
they're military or whatever.
right,
Yeah.
military presuming force and so on. Like just I can't. Like and it's part of why I think Outlaws could have been better than it was if they had a few of those really big characters, the big sheriff or whatever. Who is the big sheriff? Let them be somebody.
Though
right?
I will say to answer Blogatog's question, I do think the answer is Bloomborough. Mostly because of the acquisition element.
Mm,
Because like even if we said they're near equal in sales or whatever in popularity,
sure.
I think I've seen way more people picking up the game, way more stories of like, I've been able to get my nephew, my cousin, my wife, my whoever to play this game with me, or I built a deck for them because they were interested. Like way more of those stories coming out of Bloomborough. So while it like Eternal Masters sold well and is popular, those cards will continue to sell well because some of them are just absurd. Like I think that appealed to already existing players that play the older formats and stuff, whereas Bloomborough is bringing in a lot of brand new eyeballs.
And a lot of like spouses and things, right? There
Yeah.
were lots of married couples and things that were hanging out at the pre-release, as I understand it, because suddenly, finally, their spouse found characters that they thought were interesting and cool, and they were like, "Oh, I can connect with that," and they're a little neat, and they're lizards, and they're rabbits and whatever. That's cool. So yeah, just again, just a fantastic year in ways that we didn't have, I think, as many highs last year, which is great. We're going to move out of the first pick here to gather the townsfolk. Thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_8N48 November 4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Your tool to enhance that experience, yo. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate it. Move on here to gathering that townsfolk, where we talk about community issues and things. And the issue this week, excuse me, that came up was on the WeeklyMTG string. They talked a little bit about what's coming to Arena and what's not, because there have been some big changes. Like, for example, pre-cons are now available to purchase on Arena. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Do you guys like the idea of pre-con purchases?
Yeah.
It's another way to purchase a deck and already be ready to go. So it's fine.
Yeah. If I go to a game store and I buy a game and I go home and I can't play that game, I'm going to be upset. Magic is unique in that it is designed in such a way that that is possible. So I like it that there are training wheels, easy ways to get to onboarded and play Magic as soon as you download the program. So I'm all for it. I don't see why. I don't know what the downside of this could possibly be, but I'm certainly in favor.
Yeah, I think
it's also cool if you're chasing certain cards, right?
Sure.
And they're already in the pre-cons. So like, cool, just buy it and you get all the other stuff too.
Right.
Why not?
Right. And for what it's worth, honestly, this feels like it should have been in the client years ago. Honestly,
came out.
Like, you can calculate values and things. You've literally laid down the value of a mythic and a rare in dollars, let alone in sort of, gems and gold versus the packs you buy and so on. So, like, you got the numbers. Like, I'm glad they're finally here, which is appreciated. Note they had to change or choose between the Bloomborough commander face commanders or the critters, and they added the critters, which I thought was honestly the right choice. No plans to shift support away from Alchemy. I had heard on the grapevine that Alchemy wasn't long for this world, but maybe that was wrong.
It's fine. I mean, if you're making enough money on it to justify it, go ahead.
It's cool.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that it does, and again, I've been an Alchemy apologist in the past, and I will try to continue to be. It is harder and harder, but it allows for Magic designers to exercise a different muscle. It allows for additional design space to exist, and it allows for something entirely unique in Magic to happen, which is redesigning cards as the formats develop. It is what we like about Marvel Snap and what we like about Hearthstone is that the metagame can be adapted on the inside, not simply by banning cards. So I want it to succeed. I just don't see how in its current iteration it will.
Yeah, I just wish at this point that they were much like Marvel Snap in a way that there were weekly updates every week in Marvel Snap, whether you like it or not. Something's being tweaked, something's changing. A little number here, a little number there. Sometimes a complete rework, but most of the time it's just a little up, a little down, whatever. And they did that for a while, if you recall. And particularly, I loved the fact that they would take things, as I recall specifically, like samurai. Right? They made like all the samurai better
Yeah.
in Kamigawa because they weren't very good and constructed at all.
No, they sucked.
Yeah, they were terrible. So they pushed them. They were also still terrible. But it's okay. But they tried, right?
They
The
tried.
fact that they tried was super important. And it lets you build a deck that wasn't like, it wasn't great, but at least it was tier 2.5 versus tier unplayable garbage. Like, do that some more. Try harder.
No, it doesn't even need to be weekly. If you did it every 3 weeks, I'd be happy. At this
That would be
rate,
great.
now
Yeah.
it's like it comes out, and we've had full seasons where nothing even gets touched.
Right. Nothing changes.
So it's like, why are we even doing this experiment anymore? And like, if we're gonna do it, dedicate a team to it every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks.
Right.
Have some kind of updates happening and keep the format changing and fun. Otherwise, it's just standard with some weird cards included.
Right. And like in particular, make stuff that sucks good.
Yes.
Right. To try that. You can turn the knobs back down if you went too far. You know what I mean? Like there was such opportunity there, and I feel like they did put resources and time into it, and maybe they didn't see the jump and play that they wanted to or whatever, and they just quietly killed it because, like you said, there's been entire set to set where nothing changes at all. And it's like, okay. I mean, you added alchemy cards to it, but whatever. The Pioneer Masters is still coming. They didn't say a date, but it's still coming, which is good. And if I can just get that stupid card from what's it? The one that has Surge. That's like the 2-1 with Surge, the red guy, charging something Berserker or something. You know what I'm talking about? What's this stupid
No,
guy?
but I'll Google it.
I'll find him. But either way, there's like that one red card. He's in all the mono red or the red aggro decks. Please help me, chat.
To me, that was the only real bit of news, really. Like a lot of this was just kind of like, all right, this is just stuff. But that was the only one because I think some people were anticipating that being a thing, the Pioneer Masters. And it turns out, I think they made the right call of just like, hey, we already have a billion things come out and there's no good spot to put this, especially when the others are bangers and making money anyway. Smart move to go, you know what? Let's just move this on to next year sometime. And if we have a dead spot or we have something we're not too sure about, we can just slide this right in that spot and be okay financially next year.
It's Reckless Bushwhacker. Reckless Bushwhacker.
Oh, Bushwhacker.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
That kind. I swear to God, I go through deck lists in Pioneer deck lists, and I'm like, oh, that deck looks so cool. And I start to like, okay, everything here is on Arena. Yes, except Reckless Bushwhacker. It's happened like a half dozen times. If that card is not in Pioneer Masters, I will flip.
That guy's 8-whack.
It's ridiculous. He's so good. He's in so many lists. It's crazy. So yeah, that's a whole thing, and it's weird, but whatever. All right, let's move on here to it's time for the drama, y'all. It's time for the drama. As we move on here to Desperate Ravings. Now, Doomwake is a popular streamer, and in full disclosure, I work for CoolStuffInc.com. I'm the marketing manager. He is sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com. There's a whole umbrella over this. But what happened was that in RCQ, he was playing a younger dude who I believe was 14. And he had a pretty salty experience. The 14-year-old was playing Nadu. There were a lot of words said and how effing annoying Nadu was, and then he killed him in game 3 with it, and off he huffed. And afterwards, Doomwake was a lot of self-reflection. He calls himself not a good person and so on. I don't think that's very helpful for what it's worth, but he notes that today was an eye-opening experience and so on. And part of the problem, a couple ways to look at this. One is, for me, in terms of like growing as a person, you grow as a person, in my opinion, if you look back on something you did and you cringe. if you feel bad about the way that you
Oh
handled
yeah, I
something.
have a couple of those
Sure.
moments for sure.
That's how, that to me is how you grow, is I will never act like that again. And
Yeah.
that's what some of this felt like in terms of the way Doomwake was taken, was, wow, I never realized the way that I was impacting people and so on. Okay, cool. Well, the other half of this is then people were like, well, Doomwake, this ain't exactly your first rodeo when it comes to salty behavior. And that's an issue in and of itself, in that there is two aspects. One is the cringe at the way you acted, and the other is not acting that way and recognize
Yeah.
what makes you act that way so you don't do it again.
I will say though, and I don't know Doomwake on any type of personal level, but to be fair, you can have a certain behavior, and sometimes it takes a certain moment to make you realize that behavior exists, right? It's like the person who's on drugs or whatever, and they have to have that real bad incident that day where they go, "Oh crap, this has gotten out of control," right? Like you've been doing it, you've been doing it, but it had never really been a problem. But then the thing happens that makes you realize, like, "Oh crap, I'm a real issue now."
Right.
Right? And maybe that's all this was. Like maybe they do have history of behavior, but cool. If you do better because of it, great.
Yeah. I think that if you look at the Twitter interaction between Charlie Fisman and Doomwake, um, Charlie had a remarkably calm and reflective reaction to this.
It's true. For a 14-year-old, it's
For
honestly impressive.
how old?
14 was what I heard.
14, dealt with a tough situation of someone being angry and someone being upset and ended it with all good, on to the next one. And Doomwake, to his credit, seems remorseful, responding directly to Charlie and then writing up a statement of his own, regardless of whether he's got history or not, seems remorseful, seems apologetic. And obviously, the true test will be what behavior comes later, but we don't know what behavior comes later. I think that the best you can hope for from Doomwake is what he came out with. It was a good apology. It was a thorough apology, and it didn't make any excuses. I don't know what else you want from him at this moment. In the future, we want changed behavior. That's the true goal. But for this moment, this is the best I've seen.
I've also been negative on things because people will attack any apology.
Of course.
Right? It seems like every apology was something, well, but you didn't say this, or you didn't say it this way, or
this one's
why'd you post
one.
it at night when fewer people were going to see it instead of posting it in the morning, whatever it is, right? So I'm like, cool. They said their piece. Nothing was wrong with it, fundamentally. Now it's just actions speak louder than words.
Yep. As someone myself who has been a bad loser, a salty loser, who's gotten angry, even after I had some amount of notoriety, I've salted off at people, and that's inexcusable behavior. And I've kind of stopped going to events because of it. And I've stopped taking Magic as seriously, partially because of it, because of how bad my own personal behavior has been. So if you're a known entity in the community, especially on the competitive side, like Doomwake, it is something that it requires training. It is something that requires work and practice, and is a part of your game that, just like knowing how to play your deck and just like knowing how to take care of yourself when you're at your tournament, this requires practice and requires working on. And, I'm hopeful that that is going to be the case. Again, I don't think that we can ask for anything better than this current result. A mature victim of the crime seems to be happy with where things are at. The perpetrator of whatever occurred seems remorseful and ready to change behavior, and we'll see how it goes. But for the outlook, looks good.
Yeah, I think, as you know, this is about as good as you're going to get in terms of this, scenario. And but this is also a test. This is a test for Doomwake to, you can't just always learn how to win. You also have to learn how to lose. The best on the planet are still going to lose a giant chunk of the time. Like, you didn't see every time that so and so scrubbed out of such and such event or screwed up a money draft, and you never saw those things, but they lost and they dealt with it and they moved on. And people have gotten bad reputations for being those sore losers and how they react to things, and that's gross as well, honestly. And so so this is where Doomwake has the opportunity. And it sucks that it's not anything you can just turn a switch. It's, event after event, week after week, month after month, going to events and not showing your butt, quite frankly, when you lose and it doesn't go your way. So this is quite an example, I think, of handling things. He didn't sing the apology, for example.
Yeah, there's no ukulele involved.
Ukulele necessary,
Yeah.
which is appreciated. But yeah, I mean, again, and the fact that this kid, God bless him, he is a kid, took it as well as he did. Like, said, look, man, I get it. High five, get him next time. Moved on with his life. That's really impressive, honestly.
And good on him. And this is going to take a while for Doomwake to come back from. And that's okay, because you got to put in the work every single day.
Yeah. I also want to say, let the kid be an example to everybody, right? Stuff happens. Sometimes people are emotional in a moment or whatever. Like, that doesn't mean it needs to be an ordeal. We don't need to hold it over them forever. Like, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes people just have a weak moment and just say something or do something. If it's like, if it didn't outright harm you or whatever, like, it sucks. Yeah, bring it to their attention. But cool, once it's done, it's done.
And I think Pharmacist Judge is right. It's going to take years, The next event he goes to, if he just gets stomped out 0-2 from bad draws and mana screw and takes it great and moves on, no one's going to write a post on that. He shouldn't. I hope to God he's not going to write a post on that. You know what I mean? But like, that's something you just get to do silently, consistently for years to prove that things have changed. And
it becomes your reputation, right? Enough people you've played against or interacted with go like, oh no, that guy, he's a cool guy. Or like, oh no, that guy, he got mana screwed both games we played and he didn't even bat an eye or whatever, right? So that becomes your reputation. It's not just gonna happen.
Right. And when you're in those circles, and Ruben, that's like, you play against a lot of the same people all the time,
For sure.
That's how you'll get that reputation of doing this and doing that. And so when you start to play against those same old people again and you react differently, that's what starts turning that tide and starts having people recognize that you're different and things are different. And that's awesome.
Yep. I know what it's like to go to an FNM and have the guy that salts off be at that FNM. And I also know what it's like to be that guy. And I remember the moment when I was like, oh wait, I'm that guy. I need to change. I need to be different. Or move. Which I do a lot of.
It's like,
but also life and just go somewhere else.
Reputation rehab. Just
can't move. You can't. There's only one internet, so you can't really move from that one. It's hard and it takes work, and I'm hopeful for this situation.
Jerry T, good example.
Jerry T is a great.
Jerry T is a great example.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of good examples from the pro scene. But Jerry was a very well known bad loser for a period of his early career, and we barely remember that anymore. The only reason why we remember it is because we're old.
Yeah, now he's a good guy, Jerry, man. He's
That's
awesome.
Right.
We're crusty. It's fine. Like, we're gonna go into Going Infinite. It's been a minute since we've done one of these.
Hey, speak for yourself. I lotion up regularly.
Well, fine. I currently have a million small cuts from my new cat, and
that's also true.
She's lovely.
I got new headshots in. Guys, let me tell you, my arms look really good in my headshots.
That's
weird.
nice.
It's a weird thing to say, I know, but they do.
Let's go. All
hey,
right.
dude, you got to take those wins where you can as you start aging,
Well, in this week's Going Infinite, Saffron Olive, posted an interesting tweet up here saying, what, in your opinion, makes for a good Magic format? I think sometimes we complain a lot about formats being bad, but I'm not sure we spend enough time talking about what makes a good format. We can certainly complain when there are spikes in power levels. There's Nadus and things when new sets come out and you're like, oh God, they busted it or whatever. There's also, I think, the celebration of a format like Standard right now, which is just so very open. There's no, if I recall, there's no Bloomburrow Pro Tour, right? So there's not going to be this like pure, like, drilling down to the best of the best of the best for a minute. It's going to take probably another couple weeks or whatever to really get there. And so for now, it's kind of wonderful, and you can play whatever you want.
All right. I have a pessimistic outlook on this question.
Oh, great.
But I feel like for me, a lot of this is the same that when people say what makes a good limited or draft format. Mm-hmm. It's generally if somebody's winning or not. Right. I see that from a lot of people. Right. They'll say, oh, this format was terrible, or this standard was really bad, or whatever. And it's just like, but why? And then it'll be like, oh, well, their favorite deck sucked or whatever. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean the format's bad. It just means you didn't choose a good deck to play. Mm-hmm. Right. So, like, I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot that you could say makes a format. I think where he points out, like, is it diversity of decks? Is it different types of difficulty of decks? Different strategies, whatever, which I think we have a lot of that right now in standard, which is good.
Right.
But I think a lot of people also will go, well, it's that format, it has to suck. Right? Like it's legacy or whatever. Or in some cases, they only play modern. So if it's standard, it's got to be garbage. And it's like, we gotta be fair when we're talking about, because there's some formats I've looked at that look great. I just don't play them. I'm not gonna sit there and say they're terrible. I'm just like, yeah, all right. Looks like a pretty healthy tournament. Awesome.
I'm sure Vintage is fun. I haven't played it in like 10 years. So,
Man, I haven't played a vintage game probably 15 years.
it's been
Seriously.
a long time.
Yeah.
I think well, first of all, I like to always acknowledge that something will always be the best. It has to be something, no matter what, whether it's a combo, whether it's interaction, whether it's something that is way overpowered for the mana that you're putting into it or where the resources, something's always going to be on top. For me, the question is, what is that thing? And what I always respected about like the last, going on this point, 10 years, but around the last 8 years of design, has generally been to not define what the best is as clearly as possible. Like I think you've got like Shouldred and things that kind of like the outliers, but and Fable is very similar of the Mirror Breaker. But the idea of like when you're picking a 1 mana 1 drop in your red deck, there are multiple options. For your 2 drops, there are multiple options. And they've got to the point where there is no clear best 2 drop. It's based on what you're doing. It's based on how you want to build your deck and how you want your deck to execute. I think that is like the optimal position where you have various archetypes, but there's no clear best version of those archetypes. There's just different options in how you push and pull the little levers.
Yeah, because there's like, even now it's a Shieldred attracts whatever, but like they're not super dominant cards in the format. The decks they're in are still good and playable, but like they're definitely still beatable. So I think that's where you want to be, right? Where you have these powerful cards that you can play and can be swingy, but it doesn't mean you're shoe in to win. Because I'm with you. Like there's going to be something that eventually, if it isn't the outright best, there will be something that's at least the most popular.
Sure.
Right? There'll be something at tier 1 that of the 5 tier 1 decks, some part of the community will decide this one should be played more than the other ones or whatever. But yeah, if that's the case, that's still pretty healthy. Because right now, I would say especially if you're playing on Arena lately, just getting your games of standard in, if you played for 3 hours, you might face 8 or 9 different decks, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah. I think my answer is diversity of cards. I think the more cards that see play, the better the format, not necessarily diversity of decks. The more the higher the percentage of cards that are legal in a format, to me, the better the format is. So you can have lots of different types of mid-range. If they're using different cards, I'm kind of okay with that. If you're having lots of different decks, also using lots of different cards, also great. I think you also want to have a good mix, a pretty even mix of skill versus luck. Because if you have too much skill, you end up with Callblade, and if you have too much luck, you end up with Jund. Not that either of those decks are 100% one thing or 100% the other, but they are both not looked favorably upon historically as the best formats of all time. So I think that you want a good mixture of both of those things. You want a competitive balance across all archetypes, or several archetypes at the very least.
Sure.
Especially when you look at draft. You look back on historically the most favorably looked upon draft formats, and it's Innistrad and it's Dominaria, both of which had 6+ archetypes, all of which could be argued were the best archetype in that format. Like there wasn't a guaranteed best archetype in any of those draft forms.
I agree with Farms as Judge that I think Jund was fairly good in terms of like your randomness or whatever, but Aetherworks Marvel was like that.
Sure, Marvel's another great one.
You just spun the wheel, right? You just spun the wheel, and let's see if I won or not. Like, and that to me sucks as Magic. I don't like Vintage because it always has the like 8 or so of the power 9, depending on what you're looking at. And that's where like every deck starts. Every deck starts in Vintage with Black Lotus and the Moxen. And if you don't start there, what are you doing?
I mean, Pauper is the best format for competitive diversity, for a variety of reasons, and also for the most widely playable card base. Maybe not the highest percentage, but certainly the most archetypes, except for maybe standard right now.
Here's an interesting thing about standard too, right? We're in that 3-year rotation solidly now.
Right.
And there was that concern of like, well, if we have all these cards, then there's only going to be, a handful of top decks because everybody's just going to play the same thing and the like new cards won't have an impact.
Yeah.
But that actually hasn't
How's
happened
that
for the
turning
last
out?
year. Yeah,
Yeah.
like new sets are finding homes. People are building decks around different stuff. Like old cards that weren't being played now are starting to get looked at a little bit because something new comes out and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, remember this other card? Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's working. And crazy, but it's working.
Right. And I think ultimately, at least from what I can tell, Wizards is trying to do this in terms of having more cards played and more types of cards played in Modern through the Horizon sets. But the problem is the Horizon sets also come with them such pushed, sort of mana costs and things that it becomes closer to Modern Horizons constructed than it does all of these other cards get played now. It's like, no, the Horizons cards get played with a few of the older cards now, but that's what's meshing the format because you got to push them a little bit to make them playable, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's part of the problem because the average card that comes out in a Horizon set, if you're looking at similar rarities, similar type of card, whatever, it's probably going to be better than 60, 70% of the other cards of its type in the format.
Right.
So, like, you almost don't have a choice but to play a bunch of those or you're just going to be behind.
Right. You're going to literally play a suboptimal option versus a better one. And, call it capitalism, but that's where we're at, But I appreciate them trying to get different things, more playable, better options, whatever. But I also recognize that in and of itself warps the way that format works and what is important to it.
And also, modern players may not like that and complain, but you also bought the hell out of the set. So I'll say it again. You can complain about a thing, but if you're bitching while you're handing over $20 bills, they're going to keep doing the thing. Right. That's just the way it is.
When you actually stop buying things, aka Aftermath, we'll never see that again ever.
Yep.
Just remember that's how that worked. And so, with that said, let's go ahead and turn the corner here to the finisher. Now, Republican vice presidential candidate JD Vance recently made it known that he used to play Magic in the Ohio Valley in the 2000s, saying that he ended up quitting the game due to it being, quote, embarrassing. So, lifelong embarrassments, pull up a chair and tell me, what's your pitch to get JD back into MTG, Ruben?
Well, I too played Magic in the Ohio Valley in the 2000s, and I gotta say, it was not easy. But there's nothing to be embarrassed about after 0-2 dropping from a 5K in Morgantown, West Virginia, or Detroit, Michigan, after facing down a GP winner and a PTQ final boss to start the day. And if current polls are any indication, Ohio is going to be better for mono red this time around.
Wow.
That would be a mono red area.
It's true.
So let me say this, that I think he's lying because why would your wife bring up a thing today for a thing you didn't play since you were like 15? I'm just saying. But we've been talking about standard being in a great place right now. And the metagames is open and varied with just a constituency that he hopes votes for him. We'll see. And his running mate this fall, obviously. But most importantly, he's free to change decks week to week, which is fantastic because we know how much he likes to change positions.
It's true. Just a couple of years and everything's different. It's weird. Look, Magic has been great for 30 plus years. It's played by more than 30 million people worldwide. It's played by people of all walks of life, from the working class to the bourgeois and everything in between. Embarrassing? Question mark. It's as American as apple pie. So JD, come back because nothing will put the commander-in-chief quite like Magic the Gathering. And that ends another live episode of Magic Mics. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, always good to be here, but I will definitely be off playing some more Standard.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. And vote this fall if you're American.
Vote.org. Please, please, please.
Vote for the people that you want to listen. You vote for your next opponent. That is what voting is.
And we move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at Magic Mics, live or taped on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, on TikTok at Magic Mics Cast, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.